Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the afternoon session of the OVO Extreme Hangout. My name's Tom. I'm from OVO. Very excited to be here today, as I hope you are as well. For those tuning in for the first time, today is all about sustainable pleasures. What does that mean? It means living your best zero carbon life. We've already heard from experts from the music industry, from energy, from industry. This afternoon, we're starting off with a fantastic stellar panel of sustainable fashion panelists. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce them as Mary Fellows, Sustainability Consultant, Sasha Newell, founder of My Wardrobe HQ, Cressie Westling, founder of Elvis and Cressie, Bay Garnett, journalist, Siobhan McKenna from Regen, Denim, and Dr. Naomi Cooper-Bailey from the Institute of Sustainable Fashion, chaired by the lovely Amber Nutter from Extreme.
Tom, thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon at the Extreme Hangout. We are thrilled to have you all here. It's very confusing for me, actually. I've now worn my glasses because I need to read questions, and I look up and I can't actually see any of you properly. But I can see lots of you here, and that is completely thrilling because fashion is a fun subject, and we all need it for obvious reasons. And many of us love it. And when it comes to decarbonisation and when it comes to our care for animals and animal welfare and the natural resources from our planet, our clothes are very much interlinked, interwoven into that chain. And I'm thrilled to be joined by all these fabulous ladies here today to talk to us about their journeys in sustainable fashion and what exciting new innovations there are out there, and what fabulous leaders there are in the fashion industry. And I'm really pleased to tell you all that I'm surrounded by fashion leaders when it comes to sustainable fashion. So without further ado, I am going to let them all introduce themselves a little bit. Cressie, we're going to start with you. And I also would like very much for you to tell us a little bit about the clothes you are wearing today as well. So I'm going to hand over to you right now.
Okay. My name's Cressie. I'm the co-founder of Elvis and Cressie. Essentially, we do three things. We rescue materials that would otherwise go to landfill. We transform them into beautiful things, and then we give 50% of the profits to charity. The material we're probably most known for is that we started in 2005 with London's decommissioned fire hoses. This is a beautiful nitrile rubber material that's had a long history of saving lives, and instead of letting it go to landfill, we turn it into bags, belts, wallets, and then half of the money goes to the firefighters' charity. So it's kind of a wonderful model. We've duplicated that across 15 different wastes, and then we have charity partners for all those wastes. What am I wearing today? Well, I've got the most fantastic pair of boots on that are made by the Alberta Boot Company, which is where I'm from in Canada. They resole them for life. So these used to be my brother's boots from when he was 13 years old. He's now 42. I will die in these boots. I will be buried in these boots. The jeans are from eBay. The jumper is from Marks and Spencer, and I got that when I was 19 years old. And the belt I made myself. That's what I'm wearing.
Well, that sounds like you've come dressed for the occasion. Completely brilliant. And we all love our old M&S jumpers. I have plenty of those myself too. Yeah. So that's really fantastic. Thank you very much. Mary, without further ado, honey, you're looking fabulous as always. Please, will you tell us a little bit about all the wonderful work that you're doing, and obviously about your outfit too.
Of course, thank you. Hi, I'm Mary Fellows. Hopefully this is working. I am historically a stylist and editor and writer. I've worked at 11 editions of Vogue. I've contributed content to over 50 titles, magazines and newspapers. I've dressed Oscar and BAFTA winners, including Olivia Colman, Julianne Moore, Scarlett Johansson. I've launched my own Vogue, which was in Turkey. I was also the only ever editor to work at The Economist on fashion, on their Intelligent Life supplement. And running up to the pandemic, I felt that with all the work I'd been doing on A-list actors at things like the Oscars and BAFTAs and putting sustainable outfits on the red carpet, I still felt like I wasn't doing enough. And I was putting a lot of pressure on brands to come up with better solutions for when I was dressing these A-list talents, and I felt that they were unclear and confused, and there was a huge gap in the market of fashion for better advice to brands about how to be more sustainable. And so during the pandemic, with my spare time, I went back to Cambridge University and joined their the Institute for Sustainable Leadership there, and completed that program, and have since launched a business called Green With Studio, which is a consultancy platform that empowers, we're focusing really on small and medium brands at the moment, and some beauty as well, to empower them to become cleaner and greener. And it goes from everything from touching right down to fibre and yarn, right through to sometimes we're just doing their comms and their messaging and their marketing and collaborations, white labelling and everything in between. And what I'm wearing today is thinking of being buried. I can think of worse ways to be buried than in this. It's a woven ikat fabric from Uzbekistan that took 80 hours to make. It's a good example of slow fashion using only non-toxic vegetable dyes, and it was made by artisans. And it's completely timeless, and it is like a bit like a wearable carpet. And I think that's why it's not ever going to be trendy or not trendy. It's just beautiful.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on the beauty of it. It's completely wonderful. Thank you very much. And now we're going to come to Dr. Naomi, who's brilliantly got a PhD from the London College of Fashion, which I just think is wonderful. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about that, and then obviously now your role within the British Fashion Council.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel today. Very, very privileged to be part of something at COP, so I'm very excited, thank you. Yes, as you said, my name's Naomi. I will speak a little bit about my PhD. I did a PhD at London College of Fashion, which I completed a couple of years ago. My research was about developing an alternative to fur and exotic animal materials. So it's really saying that a lot of fur and exotic animal materials used in fashion are used as decoration. And can we come up with a decoration that's not animal derived, that's still fulfilling similar values, similar desires? So my research was very industry focused. So I interviewed a lot of designers in industry to find out why they were using fur and exotic animal materials, what the kind of underlying appeals were, and then used that as a design brief to come up with alternatives. So it was a really kind of hands-on, as I said, a PhD, but it was a really hands-on, practice-based PhD. My background's fashion design, so a lot of making. It was really fun. But yeah, and then a couple of years later, I'm now a research fellow at the Institute of Positive Fashion, which is part of the British Fashion Council. I started in April, so I'm fairly new. The Institute of Positive Fashion itself is also fairly new. It's only a year old. But it's really effectively a department within the British Fashion Council that's there to positively change the fashion industry in the UK. So the first project that we're working on is called the Circular Fashion Ecosystem Project, and we launched our first report in September at London Fashion Week, and that report was giving recommendations and actions to stakeholders throughout the supply chain in ways they could become more circular. So really fantastic report. The next stage for us now is to really further engage with our stakeholders and really try and make change. And I think a lot of people in the room will agree that we've heard a lot of promise and we've heard a lot of commitment, but now is the time for action and implementation. So we're really excited to actually start some projects that actually demonstrate how these changes could be made, and kind of putting stakeholders together and see what happens and trial things out. So yeah, that's where we're at. And to quickly talk about what I'm wearing today, I wasn't prepared for it, but I'm wearing a dress from Eden, which I had a very, very quick Google just before this talk, and I think they've actually gone bust, which is a bit sad, but it is a sustainable fashion brand from Africa, and I've had it a really long time, so I can say that at least. And that's me.
Thank you very much indeed. Siobhan, should we move to you now? I'm super extra delighted to have you on the panel today because you're from here, right here in Glasgow, aren't you?
Yeah, here at Glasgow, born and bred.
Please, will you tell us a little bit about your journey into the sustainable fashion world and what your business is doing?
Yeah, of course. First, thanks for having me on the panel. It's nice to be out in in-person events at COP as well. I run Regen Denim, which is a circular denim brand based sort of on vintage workwear. So we create like timeless workwear pieces, mostly unisex, and we do a repair service as well. So we sort of offer our community and our customers the opportunity to keep their existing clothing in circulation for longer. So we'll do machine darns, but we'll also do sushiko, So we quite often get like jackets that are in rags, tatters, and we'll just adorn it in like really nice hand stitch sashiko, and it sort of just turns that old garment into like a piece of wearable art, I like to say. And we also do mending workshops as like a way to kind of engage with our local community and just get everybody learning how to mend, because the best thing that we can do for our planet, like a kind of easy thing that we can all do for the planet, is just keep what we have going for as long as possible, and that's your clothes or just your appliances, just whatever you have, keep it going as long as possible, and it'll save you a pretty penny too. And I am wearing all local brands. I'm wearing my own jacket. This is the Willow jacket, made from all upcycled denim or recycled denim. And these are from Helium Exploring, one of my good friends who's also a local designer. These are organic cotton wide leg trousers. They're cut for petite women, which is me. So I basically live in these. I've already had way more than 30 wears out of them, so yeah. Thanks.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Bae, you've been doing this for a little while. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
Yeah,
But
well,
you really were
I'll take that the right way.
Total pioneer in this space, rocking it already in the 90s. Go on, give us the full lowdown.
Well, thank you. I guess in the 90s, sorry, it's quite loud. I worked on a fanzine called Cheap Date magazine, which was kind of then a bit more counterculture of charity shops and thrift stores, and we interviewed people we thought were cool, like Debbie Harry and Anita Pallenberg and Kim, what's her name from Sonic Youth? Kim Gordon. Thank you. Kim Gordon, and basically people we thought were cool, and we were very anti-marketing and very, I guess, anti-fashion in the sense of we felt like it was very much about brainwashing, and we were very much into charity shops. So anyway, I did these series of fake campaigns. So Yves Saint Laurent became Salvation Army, and Burberry became Borrowed, and Prada became Poached, and Cartier became Cast Off, and the editor of Vogue saw them and said, will you be an editor here? And I was like totally surprised, because I was really not into fashion. I really wasn't. I was into thrift stores, and I didn't really understand why people would want to wear the same clothes as everyone else. Anyway, I went there, and I did my first shoot was with Kate Moss, using just charity shop clothes, I guess in 2002. And that shoot, kind of quite a lot of the items got copied by fashion houses. And I guess in a really nice way, it's gone on to be quite a kind of well-known shoot, because it was the first time that Vogue had ever done that. So from then on, I always incorporated secondhand, always, in my shoots. Because a rail didn't feel like a rail, authentic rail, unless there were secondhand clothes on it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I started working with Oxfam in 2017. We did a show together called Fashion Fighting Poverty, and it was really interesting because then it was really quite a new thing. It was not cool, really. It didn't feel like that. And then we did another show, and then since then I've worked on Secondhand September campaign. The first one in 2019 was Stella Tennant, and the one 2020 with Michaela Cole, and one just now with Sienna Miller. And I also do a pop-up with Oxfam in Selfridges for Secondhand September. And so I do love working with Oxfam, and so that's me in a nutshell. And I'm wearing basically, this is from Cancer Care, £25 on the men's rail. And this is from the British Red Cross in Chelsea, cashmere, again on the men's rail. Skirt, I honestly can't remember. I think it's like a sustainable kind of brand from somewhere, but I can't remember. And the boots are really old Jimmy Choo from like 20 years ago. And my belt is from Etro, which is actually a gift from somebody. So a bit of a mix.
Brilliant. I'm loving hearing all the stories about the clothes. I think everything in our wardrobes do tell a story, don't they? Yeah. For sure. Sasha, you better tell us about yours now.
Yeah, I'm the imposter in the room. Is that coming out all right? I'm not really from a pure fashion background at all. I came from the car sharing industry. So in my previous job, the purpose of what we were doing was to try and identify the future of basically decarbonising the roads and taking as many cars off the road as possible while still allowing transport to continue. And car sharing is a really big part of that. It will be a really big part of the future, whether it's actually driven cars as we know them or self-driving cars. The prototypes are all ready to go. It's just a question of the Wi-Fi bandwidth getting big enough. So watch this space. It's incredibly exciting what's happening there and game-changing from a sustainability perspective. So I had been working in that industry and I called up my business partner, who's Tina Lake, who has been in the fashion business for 20 years as a buyer and working in the luxury market. And I said to her, what do you think about this? You know, this idea of sharing. I've seen men very happy to share the cars that they love and cherish and practically kind of lick clean at weekends. So maybe women would do the same with their wardrobes. And she immediately saw the potential of it and said, no, I absolutely love it. We've got to do this. So that was back in, probably the initial idea was in about 2017, and then it's taken a couple of years to build out the tech. Then we went out for investment and we launched the business in 2019. And I don't know if you've seen in the press that we dressed Carrie for her wedding, so Carrie Johnson. We dressed Boris for COP26. I don't know if that's something that we should even... Yeah, it was.
That was where the rental suit came from.
Yes, yeah, we haven't put it on Instagram or anything.
His best ever.
Not known for his sartorial style, but it's an improvement on normal. So the idea with my Wardrobe HQ is twofold. Primarily, it's about taking the metrics that we saw from the car industry. For every car shared, 12 come off the road. So you apply the same metrics to fashion, you start to really solve the problem of the oversupply. I mean, the stats in the industry are in the last 15 years, fashion production has doubled. And obviously that has to slow down, and anything that we can do to slow that down is critical. And the sharing aspect works from a number of ways, because on the one hand we work directly with brands who have excess stock that they want to monetize, so we can increase their addressable market. In that, if a dress is normally £300 to buy, you can rent it for 30. So suddenly it really widens out the market, and rather than going to, you know, one of the fast fashion, I better not mention any names, but one of the online fast fashion brands, rather than buying something for 30 quid, wearing it once, throwing it away, pushing it in the back of the wardrobe, whatever, why not rent the designer original and actually support the designer whose IP it was, that fast fashion brand, you know, ripped off and basically copied within 2 weeks of seeing it on the catwalk. So on the one hand, it's more sustainable because the dress is being shared, so there's much less production involved. And on the other hand, you're actually supporting the designers who are, most of them are pretty hand-to-mouth in the way that they operate. And any help and support that they get is obviously exactly what they need. So from sustainability was always the heart of my wardrobe. And it has grown very, very, in a very short space of time, very, very quickly, sort of shockingly so, to the point where there was, I'm trying to think of James Bond premiere a couple of weeks ago, we dressed something like 30% of the attendees. So it does seem to be that there's people are very quickly adopting the rental pathway rather than just thinking, shall I buy online, shall I go to the shops? They're now thinking, shall I rent?
No, listen, I love that. I used to work in the luxury brand industry myself, and with some of the fashion brands too. And when you're out and about in London, and the expectation certainly, well, it was one that I felt on me anyway, to wear fabulous clothes the whole time. My goodness, if only I would have been able to rent more of them, I might have more money in my pocket right now, which would be a good thing. But thank you so much for that introduction, and fantastic learning about all these innovative new businesses, and obviously the role that online can bring to that as well. But guys, I'm going to come back to you now down this end, because I'm very aware I've been sitting with my back to you. Mary, we were talking just before the panel started as well about a lot of chitter-chatter going on at the moment, and you are very much an action woman, and we can tell that already because you're putting your money where your mouth is and you've created your new business. But talk to me a little bit more about what you want to see happening now.
Well, I mean, you're right. I realised when I started to delve into sustainability and fashion, and realised just how unbelievably toxic fashion was for the planet. I thought, Christ, you can't sleep at night. You can't look yourself in the mirror if you know you're part of the problem. So, I mean, I've now forgiven a six-figure salary and been flown around the world with these talents and hanging out in Chateau Marmont and the suite with all these, A-listers and living that really glam life, but I just thought, you know what, it just smells right. It smells wrong, sorry, it stinks, you know, and I've got to do something different. So, and I feel like, especially with the pandemic, because so much went online, I feel that we see so much of what the FT this week called a mile wide and an inch deep. A lot of talk, you know. People say, oh, well, you should write to your MP and tell them that you think that they should make more laws. Okay, well, and I say, well, okay, how do you write to your MP? Would you tweet them? Would you tell them, well, their offence? Would you assume that letter's going to get taken by their secretary? Like, how actually do you really do action? And it's real action that's needed. That's the problem. And then Greta said it brilliantly, blah, blah, blah. I think there's so much talk. And I think that the other thing is that you mentioned earlier about decarbonising. And yes, we really mainly do need to decarbonise the fashion industry, but there's a lot more to it than just decarbonising it, right? So one of the actions is replacing biodiversity, stopping the loss of habitat. Those are two of the things. Cleaning up the waterways. There's so much more than just carbon, which of course, you know, excess carbon leads to those kind of things in the end eventually. But that's one of the things. And the other thing about action is that the governments need to put in legislation. Like, if you think about it now, the food you buy, right? You know what's in it. You pick up a packet in the shop and you can see what you are eating and what you're putting in your body, but you cannot see what you're putting on your body. And you can look at a care label and be like, okay, it's got acrylic and rayon and viscose, and then the store assistant will say, oh, but viscose is made of wood, so it's natural. Probably it's not. It's probably associated with deforestation, right? So if the government put in legislation around mandatory reporting on complete transparency on how something's been made, I can guarantee that 99% of people who buy fast fashion would never touch it if they could see in visuals really what kind of horrors go into producing those clothes. So, and really the action is legislation, and everybody who's remotely interested in this, you know, should really do everything they can, whether it's sharing content on social media, writing to anyone. I mean, anything you can do that just doesn't take too much time. It's really forcing the British government and wider governments, wherever you come from, into a corner to legislate around it. Because until that happens, brands will continue to produce as they do, which is just toxic.
No, I hear
Does that make
you.
sense?
No, it totally makes sense. Cressie, just to follow on from that, so as a small business and growing business and emerging business, do you find that there's a place for you in perhaps some of the larger collectives, whether it's sort of Green Fashion Week now? Are you being welcomed in and amongst that, along with some of the bigger brands, or do you feel that that's still a place very much for them to perhaps, I don't want to say greenwash, I just said it.
It is a place for that. I mean, it's not. We don't go to Fashion Week because it's not a place that we want to be. This isn't my peer group. I would say the wider fashion industry. You know, we started the business in 2005 because I looked at the luxury industry as one that had structurally failed. Much like you look at Amazon, I look at Amazon as a failure. I look at Walmart as a failure. If the vast majority of your employees are reliant on food stamps and Medicaid, then you are not a successful business. You are a state-sponsored enterprise. And fashion is an environment-sponsored enterprise. It's a human-sponsored enterprise. And the big thing for me about it that is a real contradiction is that it's an industry filled with wonderfully creative people that are destroying the environment and degrading its people. And I think we need to strip designers of the term creative if they are exploiting people in their supply chain, and if they are destroying the environment through their pace and the practices that they use. So I think Elvis and I have always stayed out of it, but that doesn't mean we don't engage with it. You know, we've been kind of pioneering, I guess, what people now call sustainable luxury for 16 years. But we also collaborate with larger companies. We started collecting fire hose, but then in 2012, we looked at the leather waste situation and thought, let's do something about that. And the first company to approach us when we launched this leather solution was Burberry. And we formed a long-term partnership with them to scale up our leather solution and to scale down their leather waste. So it doesn't mean you can't collaborate, but I think, and it doesn't mean you don't wear clothes. We're all wearing clothes. We can't just say death to fashion, because we're all here, none of us are naked, right? But what we have to do is look at it and try and understand, what does creativity mean? And to me, it does mean secondhand clothes. It means actually expressing yourself and not letting someone tell you what to wear.
Yeah, well, I love what you said, actually. So I think it's such an important point, and this isn't just related to the fashion industry, but that thing of how do we judge a success for business? And it's all to do with money and profit. And I love that thing of like, well, that isn't, what's successful about that? If there's kind of levels of exploitation. But yeah, I did think I think that's so true. And it's kind of really not talked about enough, it's just all about money. But yes, I mean, for me, secondhand, I literally was like, this is it. I mean, this is it. I'm home. Why would anyone want to shop in any other way? Having said that, I do buy new things because, of course I do. But I really only buy what I really love. And I really do buy carefully. And I also think that, I just think that I think some people are kind of frightened of the charity shops, or they feel like they won't find something that's going to suit their style. And people sometimes say to me, oh, but you're so lucky, you go in and you find stuff you love, and I'm really bad at that. I'm like, no, you're not. It's just the same as any other clothes shop. Just go in with a kind of positive energy and think, yeah, what am I looking for? I always go in thinking, I really want to find a denim jacket. I just want to find a denim jacket. I don't know why. I just want to find it. And I might not find the denim jacket, I probably will, but I will find something else really, really good. And so it's quite good to go in with a kind of tuned in connection. I think also it's that thing of, interestingly, with doing stuff with Oxfam, an organisation that I really have so much respect for. And it really did not teach me, but now I think about, when I buy something, I think about, because Oxfam, when you buy something from Oxfam, you're not just buying secondhand, you're buying the money that you're spending will go to helping, beat the inequality of poverty around the world. And I think that's really good. So whether you're buying new or secondhand, think about, where's that money going? Who am I giving? Oh, am I giving more money to make him £35 billion have a bit more as well?
Yes,
or, you know what I mean? Or am I, whether it's Boohoo or, do I really want to give my money to an organisation that's exploiting people making the garments and exploiting the environment? And so I really do think about where I'm putting my money. And I think that's a really good way to sort of be more thoughtful in the way, for me, it's made me more thoughtful. And also about how I shop, and also that thing of, with fast fashion, 13 million items go into landfill every single week. And I think that, I find that I can't really get my head around it, because I'm like, well, where are they? Like, really? 13 million items every week. And there are these stats that that I've kind of picked up that sort of are really terrifying. And it's to do with, it's to do with really thinking about what we buy and trying to buy less. And that's also secondhand as well.
I believe also as well, I mean, because lots of people think that they might be doing the right thing now. You've perhaps whether it's just a regular old T-shirt, or it was a new T-shirt and you decided you didn't really like it anyway, so you're chucking it out. And a lot of people are wandering down to the recycling places, and they're thinking that they might be doing the right thing by sending these clothes off because they're assigned to go to Africa or whatever. I don't actually think, if I'm right in saying, that they really want all of our old clothes, do they?
No,
they don't.
Look at Cantamanta
there's
Market.
too many.
Have you guys, I don't know if anyone here has seen, there's a place called Cantamanta Market in Ghana where so much of the stuff that we give to charity ends up because they can't separate the fibres, they can't get the zips or the buttons off. And so they separate what they can and think what could be recycled, what could be reused, what could be just redistributed over there. And the rest, if you ever want to Google it just to horrify yourself, there are these stinking mountains of just filthy old clothes, a lot of them fossil fuel-based synthetics. It's stinking and rotting away, but taking hundreds of years to biodegrade and compose in beautiful places like that. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
It sounds very much like what we like to do with our plastic waste in the UK, which tends to be to send it to somebody else to deal with. Needs to stop as well. Yes, I was going to come to you next anyway, Naomi. No, but continue with what you were going to add, because clearly you were going to add something in that.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say that, really, we just need to be producing less stuff. That's, I feel like it's so great that I'm on this panel and everyone is aligned. But it's, you're on so many sustainability panels, and there's a real elephant in the room when it's like, actually, we just need to be producing less stuff. We have so much product currently flowing in our systems, and we need to be finding ways of utilizing that a lot more. I think, one of your questions I remember you sent over to me was kind of like, what's the most interesting, innovative thing that's going on in the fashion industry at the moment? And for me, it's like, actually, it's as simple as re-commerce. Re-commerce is hugely taking off. talking about secondhand, and it's been there a long time, but actually, so many companies now are also trying to be more responsible for their products and buying them back and redesigning them, repairing them, working with e-commerce platforms so that we're using those materials, because they are, they're precious resources, and keeping them within our supply chain for a lot longer. And I think also we need much better sorting systems as well of used textiles. So a lot of them aren't always, necessarily going elsewhere, but we can retain some of that in the UK, and they can either go back into e-commerce platforms, or we can recycle those materials into renewable fibres, whether we're mechanically or chemically recycling those fibres. I mean, that's definitely the kind of last ditch attempt, but if we can just keep, this is what we're looking at, keeping everything within a circular supply chain, effectively zero waste, is like where we need to get to. And I think, as I was just saying, a lot of that is actually we just need to be producing less new physical product. And I think for us in the Institute Positive Fashion, that's our main guideline right now, as an ask to industry, is just reducing new physical product.
I also wanted to ask you, because you touched on your work looking at furs and the roles. I mean, listen, sequins were created because people liked the effect of shimmery fish skin. Exotic leathers, we all know, whether it's an ostrich, an alligator, or a croc, or a snakeskin handbag. I mean, goodness, every living creature appears at some point to have been worn by us. A bird's of paradise. I mean, poor little guys, they all lost their feathers because we decided we preferred to wear them. Where my question is going actually with this is then, so we're not going to wear real fur for many, many good reasons. People are choosing that option. But synthetic fur, is that not made from the fossil fuel industry?
Yes. Absolutely. I think this is a really interesting point you brought up.
Out of the frying pan into the fire?
Exactly. So, I mean, going back to my PhD, my research exactly was looking at, what else is there? The fur industry is not good and not environmentally friendly, not ethical. There's two strands to that. At the same time, synthetic furs made out of, as you said, petrochemicals is also not really the ideal solution. Just to go back to that point, actually, real fur is more environmentally damaging than synthetic fur, but still, that's not at all the ideal solution. Actually, my research was trying to look at natural materials, and do we need a fake version of something anyway? Can we dive a bit deeper and find out why is it we want to adorn ourselves in these types of materials? And is there a different type of material, what's the kind of the feel and touch that we really want? Does it have to look like fur? Does it have to feel exactly like fur? What is it really about? So I think just to go back to that point, it doesn't, I think as soon as you present something as a replica as well, it seems like it's not as good. And I think that, what my research really was just trying to experiment with alternative fibres, as I say, a lot of them natural, a lot of them waste materials as well, and just explore different kind of aesthetics and different, there's all sorts of, we're talking about the state of the fashion industry, and it's very detrimental, the fashion industry, but there's also major opportunity. There's really exciting, like what Cressie's working on, that these amazing materials that we can be exploring. There's all sorts of ways, as you've talked about, Bay, that we can be styling ourselves and wearing second hand. There's fantastic opportunity for designers to be exploring, new ways of designing. Like Siobhan, I feel like I'm kind of talking about everyone in the panel here, but as I'm sure you can speak for yourself.
New friends. This is great.
Yeah. But just to wrap up, because I feel like I've gone on a bit, but the role of designer, this can be invigorated and be exciting. It doesn't have to be like, oh God, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. I've got this pressure on me to come up with something. Actually, the role of the designer and reworking current garments and repairing and redesigning, and there's so many exciting avenues to go down that we should be looking at this in terms of opportunity.
Well, that leads perfectly onto what I was going to come to Siobhan next with, because you were talking about the repair, and that's obviously a real passion for you as well. And you brought up the humble sewing machine. Now, I'm old enough to remember back in the 80s, actually, we still had sewing classes at school, and I'm not sure how many schools still do those. I sure as hell haven't noticed them in my stepchildren's curriculums at all, and I rather wish they would. And my sister, for her Christmas present last year, all she wanted was a sewing machine, and I was kind of like, wow, this is it. Sewing machines are making a real comeback. Real people want them. And trust me, if my sister was getting in on this bandwagon, that really meant that this was a thing.
Yeah, no, homeschooling is really sort of making a comeback, which is great, but we need to get sort of sewing education back into schools. I think a lot of stuff goes to landfill because people don't even know how to stitch a button back on or change a zip or bring the hem up on a pair of trousers. And going back to what Bae was saying, like going charity shopping or vintage shopping, if you have a little bit of basic sewing knowledge, you don't need to be able to draft a whole outfit from scratch. But if you know how to slightly alter a garment, you have so much more power when you go into secondhand stores because you can see something and think that's an amazing fabric. Or it might be like an old nightdress or whatever, but you can see what you can do with that. You can see its potential and you have the power to make something new out of something old. And you're not going to look like anyone else on the high street. When I was growing up, we'd meet our friends in town and you'd know exactly where everybody got their clothes from. You'd be like, oh, you got that from Topshop. Like, where's the fun in that? You know, like, we're all dressing the same. So individuality, fast fashion has sort of stolen that from us. But yeah, so repair is really, there's a lot of people in Scotland that are fighting really hard to get that back into the curriculum. My mother is an art teacher and she's been getting repair back into schools, and some of the kids were trying to thread the needle, and if you see a needle, it's got like an eye at the end of it. So you'd think it's quite obvious that the thread would go through the eye, but these kids were like wrapping it around the needle. I mean, no, like that's totally fine. Everyone's got to learn, but it's just a bit heartbreaking when it's so simple and they're so far from any kind of sewing that what some of us would deem obvious is just not at all to them. So yeah. But if you are interested in learning how to sew, just basic skills, there's a great tool online called Repair What You Wear. It's free, it's online, and they've got the most like in-depth videos, left-handed, right-handed, on how to do the most basic things. Yeah, so a great starting point, and Fashion Revolution as well. Reach out to them. You were talking, Mary, about speaking and getting in touch with politicians and your local MP. If you go to Fashion Revolution's website, there's loads of templates on how to email your MP. So you just copy it and just say, I care about the fashion industry. I don't like that all our clothes are made from fossil fuels. I don't like that people down south in Bradford, boohoo, factories are getting paid nothing, $3.50 an hour, slave labour, never mind workers overseas in Bangladesh. Like, why are the people who are literally making the product for these brands, why is that outsourced? Why is that not internal? I think that's what really needs to happen. So, yeah, brands
like,
now.
You can literally start spamming those politicians. It's quite fun.
Yeah.
Like, just spam them and troll them. Like, you just have to have a game, make a game out of it. Otherwise, it's really boring. Of course, yeah, with respect. But, you know, just literally keep sending. Like, just get the word out.
When it comes to the apps and the online content, Sasha, I'm going to ask you, I mean, you're working with wonderful influencers and people already, but I'm sure there are fabulous young bloggers and what I would call real fashion influencers and people. You're now making a face which makes me think not enough of them.
Sadly, no.
Okay, so tell me who's doing it brilliantly and what do we want to see more of, and what can we then as consumers and wearers of fashion, how do we
Venetia
help celebrate
Lamana,
them?
there's one called Venetia Lamana who's great, and she really does wear her heart on her sleeve, and it's all very genuine, but there are so few because they rely on income from most of those fast fashion brands to pay the rent. So unfortunately, there are very few influencers who are truly committed to the cause in the way that Venetia is.
There are some good ones on TikTok, though. There's a lot of good TikTokers doing upcycling. So, but that's not, of course, exactly the guys that you partner with. But if you look on for upcycling and repurposing on TikTok, it's really fun. And to your point, Siobhan as well, like to get inspired about how to repurpose secondhand clothing. There's so many ideas and really creative TikTokers doing that.
Yeah, on the note of spamming the MP and the there are some downsides to that. So we actually contributed to a government paper about 3 years ago, and we were reading through the other contributions that had come from other suggested solutions for the fashion crisis. And one of them was that everybody in the country would get allocated one dress, and they would wear that one dress until that one dress has worn out, and then you get allocated another dress. And we were reading it going, oh, that's ridiculous, you know, that's wild, that would just never happen. That was 3 years ago. And then fast forward we've just had a year where we've been told we have to stay at home, we can't drive our cars, we've got to stay inside, I can't go to the supermarket, you know. The environmental issues are going to get worse and worse and worse, and there will be a position where that's going to happen, undoubtedly, unless we try to do something voluntarily ourselves to improve the status quo. It's very likely that we will be allocated the one dress. So absolutely learn to sew, because otherwise you're going to be wearing the one dress that you've been given. And that genuinely now, having seen how people capitulated and accepted the limitations that they were given during the COVID times, as the environment becomes visibly worse and worse, you know, people will accept that this is the way that we have to live in the future. So yeah, just from a perspective of having a bit of fun with fashion, and you know, it's nice to get up in the morning and feel good about what you're wearing and not having to be wearing a uniform every day forever. And that is a future that we genuinely could be facing if we don't do something about it.
Faye, back to you for one more quickly, because then I think we're going to start to come to the audience for questions. So I hope you guys have lots, and I hope that those of you who are online as well are jumping onto Slido and sending us lots of fast and fabulous questions there. But Bae, I wanted to ask you about the roles of not just the supermodels, but models in general, photographers as well. Some of the people maybe away from like the major fashion houses, fast or otherwise. Are any of them at the moment, the ones that you know and work with, are any of those guys playing a really positive and significant role at the moment, or do we need to see and hear more from them too?
To be honest, I think we need to hear, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, on set, a lot of photographers now insist on the people, you know, there's no plastic bottles. There's a lot of that, and a lot of producers now work in ways that are eco-friendly. But it's like any industry. It's still, you know, and I think what you say about legislative, I can never pronounce it, legislative, I literally can't say it, but yeah, you guys know what I mean. Then things won't change enough. And that's, I really think it's really isn't, people don't want to change. Yes, there has been change, but I think crucially, not enough.
Aren't there great legislators of the fashion industry, the magazine editors?
I don't know who they are. I think it's from the government, isn't it? I think it's from power. It's
no,
not
I was
from.
Just thinking that really they seem to be the ones that dictate, because then.
No, I think it has to be from the government.
Magazines.
Does it not have to be from the government?
Sure.
But I will say this, from a positive perspective, from my positive perspective, is that the amount of people now, young kids. When I say young kids, I mean, you know, teenagers. Second-hand is the cool thing to do, and I think that's really, really good.
Depop has changed the way to,
and
that leads me perfectly then to just the quick fire round, as it were, which is
Depop.
The Extreme Hangout has been established here in Glasgow for the duration of COP, because we want young people to feel like they're having their say, that they can come and get involved in everything that's going on here, and also learn from the experts too. So will you guys all just give a couple of sentences, or either what you think young people can do, or maybe shout out some other brands or bloggers or people that you would urge them to follow, to learn from, any resource that's available to them. I've challenged you, haven't I?
I don't know. I mean, we run an apprenticeship program, so we have young people that have been coming to work with us, and we pay them. You know, you can legally pay an apprentice in this country £3.50 an hour, legally. It's not a living wage. We pay ours a living wage, suffice it to say, because that's ridiculous. But there is there's a lot of businesses like mine that are welcoming people in that capacity. And I'll tell you one thing, we're not the experts. We learn more from our apprentices and from the young people that come to work with us than the other way around. Age means nothing in this industry.
I love that you mentioned apprenticeships, and I hadn't even thought about it. But I think so many kids that feel like you have to go to university, and actually sometimes I really want them just to follow their passions and go and learn from the experts themselves. And I feel that apprenticeships really allow people to learn about business and can be super constructive.
As long as you don't let people pay you £3.50 an hour.
Definitely do not.
If they are trying to do that, tweet about it. Definitely write your MP about that. That's a law that's got to change.
Mary?
I think one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough in this whole discussion is that I'm obviously a second-hand junkie, like Bay and I, that's why we got on like really well at the beginning when we were both at Vogel those years ago, because I've always bought thrift. But the work I've done in places like living in Turkey and traveling a lot around India is that you realise that developing economies do not have the same allure as Western and global North economies do to second-hand, whether it be furniture or fashion, right? They find it dirty. Okay, I've spoke to lots of my friends who are Indian, Turkish, Azeris, Russians, and they're like, oh my God, somebody else owned this. Like, no thanks. And I think if there's anything that young people can really do is to think about the fact that no matter what we do in Western economies to try and reduce all our emissions, China's got all these huge coal plants that they're planning to build in the next 10 years, for example, right? So we can do our bit over this side, the global north and in the west, but we've got to influence those who are the next generation of consumers and around the rest of the world. So anyone who's watching this who has kind of followers from around the world, look at who your followers are and interact with them over DM on Instagram or TikTok and get that message out there that buying secondhand or buying responsibly is good, because it's actually those consumers that we need to influence. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Love it. Thank you so much. Naomi, go for it.
I think social media has really opened up so much in terms of young people being really informed. It's a platform for young people to be really vocal as well, and it's kind of like, there's no hiding really, is there, in the fashion industry now, and I think that's a really good thing. So I think I would just encourage young people to keep going, stay informed. Another thing I think which we haven't touched on as well is that, sustainable fashion conversation isn't a privileged conversation, and it's something that we need to open it up to lots, to everyone. We need to be hearing voices. We need to be hearing from all types of citizens in the UK, but also in the global south. We need to be making connections with people in the global south. I really like actually what you brought up about that as well. And it's just we need, as long as we get as much kind of feedback from people as possible, then industry, I guess I'm kind of here in a sense representing industry, knows how to change and knows what's to embrace. So I think if you're a young person who feels like your voice is not being heard, just try and rally some people together and just try and put something on an event, whether it's online, just keep pushing and keep trying to get your voice heard, because we do need to hear from everyone on this.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Siobhan, over to you.
Hi. I'd like to talk about international designers, as you were talking about designers in the global south. We need to support designers that aren't in the global north, so don't support me. But there's a platform that's part of Fashion Revolution called Fashion Open Studio, and they have international designers from Indonesia, Bangladesh, all over the world. So I would recommend that you check all of them out and support their work. And you can, if you can't afford to buy their clothes, you can take part in the amazing event schedule that Fashion Open Studio put on. And on top of that, repair your clothes. It's really good fun. It's really wholesome, it's really mindful. You feel accomplished because you've used your hands, and you have built a relationship with that garment, so you care enough to keep it going for longer. Yeah.
Wonderful answer, thank you. Bay?
I suppose I'd say that, although secondhand isn't the only sustainable option, it is a really good one. And I think, when one is, us are buying new stuff, buy carefully. Think about what you're buying. Think about where it's come from. Try and find out. Choose really carefully. And I think what's been, said here, and that is that we all just need to buy less. I mean, we really, really do. And I think that's the other thing. And but I'm a total secondhand. It's been my life, along with children and stuff. But it's been a massive source of pleasure, and I just think that it's a wonderful way to shop, and it's So I would always say that, like, just get down to your local charity shop, because you're also supporting, it's also about the power of where that money is going as well, which I think is really a wonderful thing, you know. But yeah.
It's a totally awesome thing. Sasha, buy less, rent more?
Well, and sorry, I'm going to throw about my microphone. We're recruiting in Glasgow, so our warehouse is actually based here, and we need probably 2 or 3 people. So I don't know if there's any students here today that would be interested in working with us, but please email me, Sasha, S-A-C-H-A, at my wardrobe HQ. We're paying a living wage. It's not, what did you got, an apprenticeship? Yeah. And we're paying travel to get there, because we're kind of 20 minutes outside of Glasgow. But if anyone's interested in that, or knows someone that might be interested, genuinely, part of the reason I'm here is to try and find some staff who are local. So.
Fantastic. How exciting is that? I love it. Okay, questions, because I've run this on for way too long, but then we have a big panel here. We had a lot to hear from them. So any questions from studio audience or from online?
There's a girl over there.
But how about anyone in the room? Has anyone got a question? Gentleman over there we have. Oh, I'll keep this. Do you want to? We'll take one question over here from online first, and then we'll come over to you.
So we have quite a few cool questions coming through, but one from Eugene from Ukraine. They're asking, how can we spot companies that are greenwashing, and how can we like actively find those that are actually making sustainable clothes?
I would say if the company is producing billions of garments a year, then it doesn't matter if you're producing 1% sustainable linen, tensile, renewable materials. That is utter BS. If there's a white billionaire at the top of the company, they don't need your money. And what are they paying their garment workers? If they don't have a sustainability section on their website, they don't care about sustainability. So, yeah.
If they get a sustainability section, I reckon they ought to be leading with that. If they're not leading with it.
I think that goes for all brands. If you don't have a sustainability section on your website, you don't care. But yeah, sustainability isn't just the fabric, it's what people are paid. So.
I also would add to that, to use a metaphor, if you know when someone says to you, don't hate me for saying this, or forgive me for what I'm about to say, or don't take this the wrong way, you know that you are probably going to take it the wrong way, right? In the same way as that, when a brand says, we're a sustainable brand, the minute they call themselves sustainable, they're not. Okay, if you're sustainable, what it actually means is that they're transparent and they're responsible. So if they're transparent, they will be, as you said, very open about how they produce and manufacture and what all their different processes are. That's transparency. If they're responsible, to Amber's point, they will happily disclose. And if they call it the sustainability section on their site, great, that's fine. But they should disclose exactly what they're doing to be more responsible and ethical. So just don't believe them if they say they're sustainable. And the other thing I was going to say is, you know, everyone who's interested in brands, or there's brands that you buy, but you feel conflicted, right? Because you're like, I really love the jeans from this brand, or the leather jackets from here, or whatever, but I don't think they're doing quite enough for the planet. Well, DM them and get all your mates who buy from them to just DM them. The more you put pressure on brands, just by, you know, either DMing or emailing or calling, whatever it is, you know, the more that eventually will get back to the top saying, we're getting all these inquiries. So like, if you love a brand but you feel, I feel a bit guilty, well, just put pressure on them. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Apparently, I mean, and you guys probably know this, but the word sustainable really shouldn't be used, really, because actually it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So a word to use exactly is responsible. But this idea of sustainability, I mean, it's so sort of nebulous, isn't it? Sustainable, I mean, the pavement is sustainable. I mean, you know, where's the information, right?
Well, so, yeah. The real definition of sustainability for anyone who wants to know is that a basic definition is that something either puts back the same or more into the earth in the process by which it was created, okay? So if you think about it, I always joke that the only sustainable fashion that actually exists is what people like wear in the tribes of the Amazon or Papua New Guinea, or what some of the amazing indigenous leaders who are here at COP as well who are wearing. They're wearing beautiful things made of natural dyed vegetables. If you're living in the tribes in the Amazon, you're making jewelry out of bark and shells, and you're wearing clothes made of woven leaves. That's sustainable fashion. Nothing else is sustainable fashion, frankly. So.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. I love that, and I think as well, I was just going to make a point that to the person who asked the question, it's also, it's not just about, you know, I bought something from a sustainable brand, therefore it's okay. It's also about how you're using that garment. as well. It's like
Washing
almost
it,
exactly the person's responsibility, as a citizen, your responsibility. And so you're going to wear that garment a lot of times. Think about that when you're purchasing something. Does it go with other items in your wardrobe? Do you think you're going to get a lot of wear out of that? Is this something you can see yourself wearing in 10 years? Like, ask yourselves those questions as well as all these great things everyone else has said on the panel.
Millie, should we have another question from you, or do we want to take the mic over to the gentleman there who had a question?
Right, really good chats here, guys. So it's a bit of a specific question, just to understand.
You speak up.
Sorry, just to understand consumer habits or the try before you buy model, right? You guys were discussing renting economy, social media, and online shops, online brands. So is there ways we can improve try before you buy, and how can we be more conscious about buying stuff online?
Who'd like to take that, Sasha?
We offer try before you buy as part of the rental service. So you can everything that we have online, you can either rent or buy, with exactly the idea of how responsible are you going to be once you bought it. This is the dream of renting it, because if you have it for a week, you wear it a couple of times, you go, actually, I'm really done with that. I'm not going to wear it again. I'm going to send it back. Someone else can wear it. Or I loved it. I got loads of compliments. It made me feel great. I can see wearing that for the next 20 years. I'm going to keep it. So that's the model, which is essentially a try before you buy. And it's exactly that. It means that rather than that impulse purchase, it's like eating a pot noodle or something, is that you go out on a Saturday and it's $5.99 in Primark, and you think, actually, I quite like it. It looks pretty good, really. And then you're standing in the queue and thinking, yeah, but hang on, if this is $5.99 and it costs probably £2 to ship it, and there's VAT, and then it costs, a pound to get it up on the rail here. So actually, how much is left for the person that made this? Yeah, it was probably made by slave labour, and you have to start doing. And the natural resource.
True cost of it.
Yeah. I mean, look at the cotton industry and what it's done to, the Aral Sea, which is gone because of $4.99 t-shirts. So all of that should come to play in the purchasing decision. And there is no doubt with rental, it is slightly more expensive product, but that's because thought has gone into it. It's being produced in a way that is more sustainable or better for the environment, and unfortunately,
as well, longer.
Yeah. And unfortunately, fast fashion can never do that at the prices that it is. I mean, there's almost been deflation in fashion where there's been inflation in everything else, and just as a starting point, that's impossible. That a pair of jeans 20 years ago was more expensive than it is today. At what cost is that?
You have to question a lot of the digital things, like if a brand offers free returns, this is a problem. Free returns is an enormous problem within the industry, because people buy stuff, put it on Instagram, and send it back, and a lot of those things end up being destroyed. Free returns is a disaster. I wouldn't buy from a brand that offered it. I think it's.
On that note, with the fast fashion brands, the cost of reprocessing back in the goods is more expensive than any profit that there would be in reoffering them. So they do go straight to landfill. So if you buy something in fast fashion and return it, it's going straight to landfill. No one's processing that and selling it again.
That's
the most simple way to.
That's huge, isn't it? That things aren't being returned to go back in the shop. They're basically going, that's huge.
A girl I know who works at Zara told me that. She said, especially during the pandemic, any returns they got, they literally just discarded them and incinerated them. And to your point, if you want to know how to be more ethical about try before you buy, well, go out on foot, go into stores and try things on, because the minute you involve logistics, your shipping and packaging, some of the packaging as well is so bad for the planet, boxes and plastic and all of that comes with online shopping. So just go out there and try, and take a friend, because usually, somebody who knows you well might say, look, you know what, I'm not so sure, or yeah, amazing. So, but yeah, IRL shopping is pretty simple.
And on your way down to the store, don't forget you have to walk or take a bike or public transport.
Yes.
Now, how about any other questions? Lady over there, can we pass the mic, please?
Is it on? Sorry, I'll just grab it. Mary, I just wanted to go on to your point about the toxic. You're wearing toxic chemicals and plastics. I don't know if you've seen any of the panels saw the Changing Markets report that came out 2 nights ago. And they've detailed every brand in every shop and visibility, about 60 to 70% of all the fashion is all fossil fuel based and toxic. So is the future actually, are we going to get to labeling like cigarettes until you actually say you're killing the earth by wearing this product? Or do you want other kind of visibility and transparency in the garments you buy?
It's a really good question. I mean, I don't know if you also saw, there was another announcement this week with the Prince of Wales, and it was about this new digital ID that's going to be attached to clothing. And with the fact is the technology right now is there with blockchain and QR codes. We're actually, at my company, we're playing around with that particular technology to find a piece of software, and I can't say any more than that, but the future will be where it will be very transparent using the technology that exists now to see what is in your clothes. And that should be mandatory. I mean, that really should be mandatory. So I hope, does that answer your question?
There's also legislation already in states like California where they've banned a whole host of chemicals. In order to export to California, you have to prove that there's no lead, there's no this, there's no that. And it's actually really hard for a lot of companies to comply with. And I think that kind of legislation is absolutely going to spread.
And there are lots of brands, like High Cure Denim is one that do it beautifully using QR code technology. So if any denim lovers out there, High Cure, Haikure. And anyone who's into beauty, you can go to cultbeauty.com and look at everything that's powered by provenance, because there is a lot of products on there where you can see all the different kind of footprint and different inputs and emissions and a lot of data points around that. So yeah, transparency and communications around products is absolutely the future. But until fossil fuels are made illegal to turn into fabrics, we go back to the same problem. I hope that answers your question. Great question.
No, we had a lady over there. I hope you have a mic now. Are you ready?
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Sabine Lavenuk. I'm a research fellow at the University of Nottingham, and I work on organising in the global garment and footwear industry. So I'm really thankful today that you've put kind of sustainable fashion onto the agenda, and I absolutely support all the calls you've made for kind of cleaner, greener methods, materials. We need to reuse and recycle more. And ultimately, I think one of you put it best when you said we need to just produce and buy less stuff. But I think we also need to remain mindful that fashion manufacturing provides a livelihood for 75 million people worldwide. Most of those are women. Most of those work in the global south. Those livelihoods are already very fragile. They get poverty pay. They work in very dangerous conditions. And I felt that maybe those women garment workers and footwear workers have been a little bit left out of the conversation today. Another thing that we've kind of agreed at the moment is that the shift to decarbonisation has to be a just one. We have to make sure that we don't exacerbate existing inequalities when we move to kind of sustainable methods of production. So my question to the panel is, what should the fashion industry or perhaps other stakeholders be doing to make sure that those women garment and footwear workers aren't left behind when we engineer this shift to a kind of sustainable fashion future?
Love that question.
I mean, there's something we've been working on, which is going to take a long time to come to fruition. But yeah, it's a really good question, because the poorest always lose, no matter what the outcome actually, or generally. The beauty of technology and using digital as an introduction platform would mean that if you could equip the very women that you're talking about with basic sewing machines and so on, they can, on a one-to-one basis, meet the market need. So, you know, as much as you do with, I don't know, an Anyvan listing, if you wanted to move products, or, you know, I'd like a dress made, you list it on the platform, and then the ladies that you're talking about can kind of pitch for work. And that's something, but first of all, they need to be equipped with basic sewing, their own machinery and so on, and access to fabrics and so on and so forth. So that's something that with a number of charities we're actually working on at the moment. It's quite a long-term plan. But yeah, there needs to be a transition if the status quo is going to change as dramatically as it needs to.
I'd like to, so if you look at garment factories, when they kind of first all started, they offered one thing. They offered like a t-shirt or a pair of jeans. They specialised in one garment. So when you go to these factories now, they have a whole design suite, and they can essentially help you design your garment, your collection for you, right? So I think we need to, that industry is going to evolve, and what I hope it will look like is these manufacturing facilities will start to mass produce garments, but from recycled textiles. It's just about evolving the infrastructure. I know I made that sound really easy, and it's definitely not that easy. But yeah, I think that is something that can and will happen if enough people fight for it.
That's exactly what this top is. Yeah. So in the conversations that we're having at the moment, this was a dress that was made, was sold in the West, has gone back and been remade into something different, and then as a sample to see how good the outcome can be.
There's so many small designers that are doing things like that, and that can be replicated on a bigger scale. But also, as we hopefully all start to stop supporting big designers, big fast fashion brands in the UK, then hopefully we'll be putting more money into smaller, more eco-ethical designers, and they will then employ these women in the global south, in Bangladesh, and pay them a living wage. So I have every hope. I mean, I have no power to enforce all of this, but I have every hope that it will be a good and just transition. And I know that there are enough people. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, like Remade Network, Remake Our World, and obviously Fashion Revolution. I can't go on about them enough, but there's loads of good people doing a lot of good work, and there's enough people fighting to make sure that that will happen. But yes, I 100% agree with you.
There's a beautiful film from a brand called Osman, which is interviews with the garment workers and who they think they're making clothes for. It's heartbreaking and uplifting. You go through a whole range of emotions, but it's really worth watching. Just Google Osman, Her Dreams Are Bigger Than Mine. It actually makes me a bit emotional thinking about it. It's a really, really beautiful film.
I've got something to add to that. For anyone who, when you're in that dilemma point, which all of us I'm sure on the panel are too, occasionally there is the moment when you do need to dash into Zara because you realise you need something or you've forgotten something. We all have that moment at the till or in the store of like, do I, don't I? Now, anyone who's interested in this subject, to the point very well made just now, should watch a movie by Michael Winterbottom called Greed, which is the most brilliant drama, which is centred around the abuse and exploitation of garment workers. And I think, to the lady's point over there, she makes a really good point, because 1/6 of the world's workforce, more or less, are involved in fashion. And I don't mean to literally make it, but when you consider the logistics and the retail and the distribution and the manufacturing and everything else. So if you were to say tomorrow, right, legislation, back to me, being a hypocrite here, okay, let's make it illegal to have fast fashion and clothes made of fossil fuels and made in disgusting conditions, then you are going to literally put maybe up to 1/6 of the world's population out of work. And then what? They go back into poverty. So we're in this really difficult sweet spot where what really needs to happen ideally is there's a series of certifications called ISO certifications, and there are other ones too, but basically they largely fall around, do the workers in the factories have water? Do they sleep in dormitories? Are they made to have forced overtime? Are they given maternity pay? Do they have light? Are they given free food? Do they have access to free childcare? I mean, these are things that we take for granted in the West, but women over there don't have. So if you feel passionate about that particular aspect of labour, then again, DM the brands you're working with, you're buying from, and say to them, could you please explain the following? Like, what kind of, can you tell me something about the rights your workers have? And ask the questions I've just listed and see if the brand will reply. And if they don't reply to you, then you kind of know that they probably don't want to disclose how those clothes are being made. And I hope that answers the question.
I had that exact issue actually with my bank. Did you? Yes.
Why?
I DM'd them about their sustainability credentials. Okay. They never came back to me. Guess what? Changing banks. Ladies, I would love to continue this conversation forever, and I reckon most of the audience are still looking pretty gripped too. So I have a suspicion you might be asked to stick around, those of you who can, to perhaps even answer more questions, or indeed find people to come and join you at your fabulous business, Sasha. Yes, so don't forget that one. Huge thanks to all of you, wherever you are in the world, online, to our fabulous audience here in Glasgow who've come to be a part of COP. We love you for that. And my most enormous thanks to Sasha, to Bay, to Siobhan, to Naomi, to Mary, and to Cressie.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And thanks to OVO, our brilliant sponsor here at the Extreme Hangout, for making this day and this week, in fact, this 11 days possible. Thank you very much, everybody.